It feels like somebody wants to sell me something!
I told you he was on to us!
Ah yes, the keto diet. Look one way and you'll see an allegiance of low-carb dieters going door to door to preach the good word of the scrambled egg. Look another and you'll hear so-called experts saying you may as well get on a statin while you're at it because those arteries aren't going to unclog themselves. I find this to be an issue in essentially everything nowadays. Nobody can take any sort of middle ground or nuanced approach. It's all black and white. Maybe, just maybe, a more moderate approach is what we need.
Nah, I just like to mess with you!
As someone that has been on a low-carb diet for the better part of 3 years, I can attest to all of the great things these diets can do.
What does a test mean? Like you take a test?
I'm not making this video as an anti-keto video, but I want to push the conversation further. We should focus on doing what is best for the individual instead of trying to cling to arbitrary boxes of diets. I look at low-carb diets as a medical intervention and as a tool. It's pretty clear that low-carb diets are incredibly valuable for people that are already insulin resistant or diabetic. In today's society, that's unfortunately a massive part of the population, which explains the praise and loyalty these diets receive. Imagine a world where 9 in 10 people had strep throat. Then a group of people discover penicillin and find that their strep went away. They'd probably take penicillin for the rest of their lives because they figured they should have been doing that the whole time. Does that mean it's a good idea?
No.
What may be a panacea for someone at one point in time could be the cause of problems just a year or two down the road. The low-carb community has contributed a lot of great things, and I'll never deny that, but they've also led to a lot of disinformation. Because the diet gives people their health back, it leads people to believe that carbs are evil and that all the world's health problems would be solved if we just stopped eating them altogether. That's just not the case, and as we'll see, carbs can have significant benefits. Again, this isn't to say you can't sustain a low-carb diet long-term, and there's plenty of keto veterans out there who are thriving to prove it. However, let's distinguish between being healthy and being optimal. After all, we're analyze and optimize, not analyze and sustain adequacy. In this video, we'll tackle 2 issues that rarely get discussed in low-carb communities, and among health nuts in general. Keto is awesome, and it's changed thousands of people's lives, including my own, but let's end the dietary dogma. Would you rather feel your absolute best, day in and day out, or be hesitant to try something new because of a cult-like mentality? Buckle up, because this is gonna get dicey.
Now that we've covered all the basics of your training, it's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Otherwise known as the master gland, the thyroid is just as important as it is overlooked. I'm serious, health problems from baldness to Parkinson's have been traced back to the thyroid. It's common for doctors to tell a patient who's having some clear dysfunction to throw up their hands and say, I don't know, and not even check for thyroid health. If they do, they'll check their thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, which as you could probably expect is next to worthless. TSH needs to be converted by the pituitary gland into T4, which still isn't the active form of thyroid hormone. No, T4 can be converted into either reverse T3, which does jack all, and T3, the actual active thyroid hormone. So why am I telling you all of this, and what does that have to do with low-carb diets? Well, one consistent finding in low-carb experiments is that subjects have decreases in T3 and slight increases in reverse T3. One of the legends of low-carb research, Dr. Stephen Phinney, made this article explaining why he thinks this isn't a problem. He essentially points out that since low-carb diets improve insulin and leptin sensitivity, it probably does the same for thyroid hormones. I've also heard this argument from Thomas DeLauer.
Carbohydrates cause a spike in thyroid hormone. So what ends up happening is, generally speaking, when you're consuming carbs, your thyroid levels are going to remain and show elevated because you have an elevation of T3, thyroid hormone, literally just to process those carbs. Nothing else, just to process those carbs.
But last time I checked, it does the same to the burning of fat too, so that doesn't make a ton of sense. You know how many people will see elevated levels of LDL cholesterol when they take on a low-carb diet? There are several reasons for this, but one of them can likely be explained by the lower T3 levels in these people. T3 induces the creation of LDL receptors, where those particles get dropped off to enter the liver. In fact, the amount of active thyroid hormone juxtaposed to LDL cholesterol is a near mirror image, demonstrating the relationship between the two. Controlled experiments have shown no reduction in energy expenditure on low-carb diets, something you would expect to see with lower T3. In fact, the most recent meta-analysis done by Dr. David Ludwig and his group showed that low-carb diets increase energy expenditure, with one important caveat: in people who are overweight. In the trials of people who are already healthy, low-carb diets have no effect on resting energy expenditure. I suspect that the increase in energy expenditure among the metabolically ill is due to the reversal of insulin resistance. In this state, the body rejects much of the signaling that the hormone insulin promotes, one of which is to metabolize fuel. Insulin also upregulates the conversion of T4 into T3 instead of the worthless reverse T3, again increasing energy expenditure. This hints at one of the core points here. Insulin signaling is important and we need it for optimal health. If you are insulin resistant, then the last thing you want is more insulin, which is why low carb is so effective in this context. However, if you are already insulin sensitive, then incorporating some carbohydrates to get the many benefits of insulin signaling may be a better option. The decrease in insulin on low carb corresponds with an increase in stress hormones like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. All of these hormones have been shown to decrease conversion of T4 into T3 and increase reverse T3. Plasma noradrenaline levels are also elevated in hypothyroid patients. A chicken or the egg scenario, but in the end the result is the same. Since you have less T3, there's no other option but to activate these hormones to keep you going. This isn't to say you'll become overtly hypothyroid, but after a while you just might not feel your best. Which brings me to... The body always requires some glucose, even if you are in a full-blown ketogenic state. This means that if you're restricting dietary carbohydrate, your body will increase stress hormones to enhance its ability to produce its own glucose. This is a big reason why people report feelings of elevated energy, mood, and sometimes even euphoria when on a low-carb diet. But is this really what we want? You would feel those same things from reeling a line of blow off of an iPad, but that doesn't make it healthy. Should we be aiming to operate our day-to-day lives in this state of fight or flight? To answer this question, we need to understand the stress response. Stress can be interpreted by the body as many things, such as caloric restriction, fasting, exercise, you get the gist. The amygdala in the brain will perceive this and tell the brainstem to release both adrenaline and noradrenaline. These hormones increase heart rate, blood pressure, and pupil dilation, essentially turning you from Bruce Banner into the Hulk momentarily. They also help mobilize fat from your adipose tissue and glucose from your liver and muscles. Periodic stressors like fasting, exercise, and cold exposure are helpful in a variety of ways, but chronic stress is something we'd like to avoid. That is the key here. The stress response is designed to be short-lived and potent. Once the brain notices this cascade, the hypothalamus will secrete corticotropin-releasing factor, a hormone which stimulates the pituitary gland to release adrenocorticotropic hormone. After this long-winded hormone moves over to the adrenal gland, it signals the release of cortisol, the active stress hormone. Cortisol has many actions, such as the aforementioned increase in blood glucose, which gives you the spike in energy you need to evade the dinosaur that doesn't actually exist. It also tells the pituitary and the hypothalamus to stop sending out the hormones that end up making cortisol, a negative feedback loop. In the short term, this is all good and actually acts as an anti-inflammatory, but chronically elevated cortisol is something you'd ideally avoid, even if it makes you feel good. Over time, this results in decreased cortisol signaling due to the downregulation of its respective receptor. It can also lead to hypersensitivity of the feedback loop, which will actually cause cortisol levels to drop. This is what many people would refer to as adrenal fatigue. Cortisol is also released to provide you a spike in energy to get up out of bed in the morning, then gradually declines until you go to sleep. One thing I've noticed is that in the low-carb community, people love their coffee.
Amazing. Okay.
I think this subclinical caffeine addiction that is commonplace is probably because many of these people aren't getting the natural amount of cortisol for proper functioning. The way that caffeine works synergistically with low-carb diets, and especially fasting, to help burn fat encourages these people to keep doing it. But I'm skeptical that this is the right approach. You are basically using a drug to compensate for your body's lack of proper function, something I'm never a fan of. An important point here is that if you are already metabolically unwell, a low-carbohydrate diet will actually decrease your stress hormones. This is probably because insulin resistance leaves your body in a state where you cannot efficiently metabolize carbohydrates, meaning there is less overall energy available. The body is likely compensating for this by churning out stress hormones to increase energy production. So it makes sense that by reversing this, your stress hormones will return to normal. Again, this is another reason why low carb is a great treatment for those with metabolic dysfunction. However, if you are already insulin sensitive and decide to restrict carbs, they'll shoot back up. Do you notice a pattern here? The body is always trying to keep you at some type of homeostasis. Another example of this is how noradrenaline receptors become downregulated even though the amount of the hormone has increased, much like cortisol receptors. Remember the thyroid hormones that are also lower on low-carb diets? Those also work in harmony with these stress hormones. These stress hormones actually stimulate the enzyme responsible for converting T4 into T3 and away from reverse T3. The opposite also happens as well, as T3 enhances the production of noradrenaline. So what does all of this mean? Well, you might end up in a situation where you have less T3 and more reverse T3, and at the same time have high levels of stress hormones but a decreased sensitivity to those hormones. Since these hormones work both ways, less thyroid hormone means less stress hormones, but you already have a decrease in stress hormone sensitivity, which also means a decrease in thyroid hormone production. Typically, this would keep going on until cortisol comes in and tells the brain to chill on the stress hormones. But oh yeah, that system is now done for too. Are you keeping up? So what do you do now?
You're fucked!
Again, I don't see this being a problem unless you're very low carb for multiple years, but that certainly doesn't sound like a situation I ever want to be in. It just snowballs until you break the cycle. Another point is that excessive exposure to adrenaline can cause certain neurons to become desensitized to the actions of the most famous neurotransmitter, dopamine. Dopamine is the desire chemical in the brain, motivating us to do things that support our survival and give us fulfillment. Once again, the body is hit with a double whammy in the state of chronic stress. Not only does the sensitivity to dopamine decline, total dopamine levels in the brain see a decrease as well. Folks, even a small to moderate amount of high-quality carbs in the diet can go a long way. I think the dietary guidelines are absolutely ridiculous as they demand the population consume half their calories from carbohydrate, but on the flip side, I also don't think that cutting them close to zero for years on end is the best way to go either. I recommend playing around with how many you decide to eat and see for yourself, but this notion that they're inherently evil and have no benefit is asinine. Let's continue to be open to new possibilities so we can all achieve our health goals. Don't let them fool you. Subscribe to our channel.